Thanks for watching. Subscribe our channel for more videos.
I was someone who worked in the White House. I worked for the President of the United States. I had an up-and-coming career in politics.
But when Ryan Hampton suffered an injury, prescription painkillers led him to heroin. His addiction story, he says, is typical of the opioid crisis, driven by the drug companies.
This crisis has ballooned all over in all 50 states, and these drug makers are 100% accountable. You know, they need to pay for the damage that they have done to our communities.
Johnson & Johnson will pay for what a judge called false, misleading and dangerous marketing of painkillers.
Johnson & Johnson, motivated by greed and avarice, is responsible for the opioid epidemic in our state. Johnson & Johnson will finally be held accountable for thousands of deaths and addiction caused by their activities.
It's come too late for the families of some.
I feel like my boy's looking down. And it's a pretty tough deal. But I think my son and Austin are celebrating today. And we got to get help to these other kids.
Johnson & Johnson says it warned doctors of the risks, highlighting the crisis of overprescribing in America.
We have sympathy for all who suffer from substance abuse. But Johnson & Johnson did not cause the opioid abuse crisis here in Oklahoma or anywhere in this country.
Johnson & Johnson isn't the first drug company to suffer in the courts. Last year, AmerisourceBergen Corporation was fined $625 million over the sale of syringes containing cancer drugs that were prepared in an unsterile environment. Earlier this year, Monsanto was ordered to pay $2 billion to a couple after the weed killer it produces was linked to their cancer diagnosis. And GlaxoSmithKline paid a record $3 billion in 2012 for the misbranding and failure to report safety data of antidepressants. It remains the largest payment ever by a drug company in the U.S.
Experts say this is going to take 20 to 30 years to clean up the mess.
Ryan now works to help others get clean, and hundreds more lawsuits are pending in a country with 5% of the world's population, but which uses 95% of its opioids. It is a uniquely American epidemic. Greg Meyer.
We have new reporting this evening on America's opioid crisis. The major drug maker, Purdue Pharma, in talks to potentially settle more than 2,000 lawsuits. And for the first time, we're now hearing from the former head of Purdue Pharma on why he says you can't blame their marketing. Here's ABC's Steve Osunsami.
Purdue Pharma is facing more than 2,000 lawsuits related to opioid deaths and addictions. And tonight there's word the drug maker is offering to pay billions of dollars in settlements. In a statement, the company explains that while Purdue Pharma is prepared to defend itself vigorously in the opioid litigation, it sees little good coming from years of wasteful litigation and appeals.
Do you believe Purdue's marketing was overly aggressive?
No.
For the first time, we're hearing sworn testimony from former chairman and president Dr. Richard Sackler. Members of his family own the company, which made billions developing and selling Oxycontin. According to the government, it's one of the most common painkillers involved in prescription opioid deaths in America.
Do you know whether Oxycontin is more powerful or less powerful a drug than morphine?
Depends what you mean by powerful. If powerful means potency, absolutely. It is twice as potent as morphine.
The clips were released by the investigative news group ProPublica. They come from a lawsuit filed by the state of Kentucky in 2007.
Purdue fought very hard, and the Sackler family fought very hard to keep this deposition secret.
Under oath, Sackler said it was wrong to blame the opioid crisis on their marketing. But the company ended up settling, paying more than $20 million.
There is no way that this intended or had the effect of causing physicians to overlook the fact that it was twice as potent. It was called out in virtually every promotional piece of literature.
Seeing those tapes for the first time, Steve joining us live tonight, and Steve, Purdue appearing to signal they are possibly willing to settle here. Of course, they're facing thousands of lawsuits across the country.
That's right, David. The company says in its statement that it's working towards a constructive global resolution, and to that end, that they're working with top state officials and plaintiffs across several states.
A VA hospital in West Virginia where a patient died after being given a drug he did not need. His death was ruled a homicide. The VA Inspector General and Justice Department are investigating, and Jeff Pegues reports there are allegations that other patients may have died the same way.
On April 6, 2018, 82-year-old Vietnam veteran Felix McDermott was admitted to the Lewis A. Johnson VA Medical Center in Clarksburg, West Virginia, with pneumonia. He was improving when suddenly, 3 days later, he was dead. According to this claim filed with the Department of Veterans Affairs by his family, no one at the hospital explained what happened to McDermott. But an autopsy performed months later came to this shocking conclusion. McDermott, who had never been diagnosed with diabetes, was injected with a fatal dose of insulin. His death was ruled a homicide. Lawyer Tony Odell says 9 or 10 other patients met the same fate.
They all seemed to have the sudden hypoglycemic event that was unexpected and unexplained, and then they passed and died.
The Johnson VA Medical Center says it is cooperating fully with the federal investigation, which does not involve any current employees. West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin says the investigation has identified a person of interest.
When someone basically was willing to sacrifice their life, and then we found out that their life was taken in such a horrific fashion, it's hard for us to imagine.
Hard to imagine for a family who now says the VA failed in its duty.